So, today we're going to be focusing on one developer in particular. And if you want to check who is going to be, what our daily feature is from day to day, make sure you check out the Black History Month command. And you can check out today's feature, February 25th. Now, it's a long one, so the links are not actually in the February 25th. They're not actually in the February 25th, I guess, message. They're in a third message talking about the person that we're featuring today. And that is Dinga Bakaba. And Dinga Bakaba is actually a developer at Arkane Lyon, which is part of Bethesda Softworks, and which in turn is under the umbrella of ZeniMax Media. You'll be familiar with Arkane if you have ever played the Dishonored series, Deathloop, and they are actually building the upcoming Blade game for Marvel that was announced recently. But I wanted to showcase Dinga Bakaba as a leader of a AAA video game development studio, because I think it's so rare that we hear of that level of leadership in the gaming industry, and it sort of speaks to his longevity in the industry, as well as his goals to improve opportunities for Black people in the industry. So, first of all, here's a little bit of info about Bakaba and his history at Arkane. And this was an article that was posted by Video Games Chronicle back in November 2021 after he was appointed the head of the Arkane Lyon studio. So of course this is based in France. He was originally the co-director of Deathloop. So just really quickly, just looking through this article, he took the role of studio director at Arkane Lyon in October after the departure of former head Romuald Capron. Bakaba also retained his position as Arkane Lyon's co-creative director, which is a role he shared with Deathloop co-director and studio art director Sébastien Mitton. He originally joined Arkane Lyon in November 2010. He was a designer and producer on Dishonored and its DLCs, and I get so triggered by the apostrophe in this possessive pronoun, which is spelled as a conjunction of it and is. He was also the lead designer of Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider, and he was also a game director on Wolfenstein Youngblood, which I was not aware of. In a review of Deathloop, Video Games Chronicle called the PS5 and PC title one of the smartest and most outright entertaining games of the year. Of course, we also know that this game originally released on the PlayStation 5 and was then subsequently brought to the Xbox platform a year later. This was a really popular game that had a lot of great reviews, and I think it's a testament to his leadership in Deathloop and previous games that made him a great candidate to become the head of that studio. Another thing I wanted to highlight is an article that was written back in December 2021. The text is particularly small here. Hey Witcher, welcome back to Asoro. Let me see, can you read this now? It's too big now. Yes! There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Witcher, for claiming your place at the head of the table with the village elders. You are welcome. I am well, thank you. I've had a very busy day. I hope you had a good day. I hope you enjoyed your weekend as well. We're talking about a particular game developer, Dinga Bakaba, who is the head of Arkane Lyon, which is part of Bethesda Studios. And I'm highlighting him today as a person with a high leadership position in a AAA gaming studio. I know you're tired because I'm tired too. I woke up this morning and I did my workout for the first time in like 2 weeks or something, so I'm hoping to sort of... I haven't really been on much of a routine. And I just wanted to wind down today by advancing the story in Spider-Man. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this feature for Black History Month. So it's pretty in-depth in terms of the links that are available today. So I've provided a little bit of a summary of Dinga Bakaba's career with the Feb 25 command, and then there's also a command which is his last name, Bakaba, so you can actually see the links to these articles that I'm sharing today. Anyway, Imogen Millar, who is a Black woman who is in video games journalism, wrote this article in December 2021 about his contribution in Deathloop and why it was important to include Blackness as part of the backgrounds of the two main characters. So the title is Deathloop Interview Director Dinga Bakaba discusses Blackness and more. Of course, it was Gaming Bible's PC Game of the Year. It was a timed exclusive on PlayStation 5 as well. It was eventually released on Xbox a year later. Of course, it's developed by Arkane Lyon, which did Dishonored and Prey, and is published by Bethesda Softworks. I don't know if anybody here has played Deathloop, but the whole idea is that it's a kind of Groundhog Day scenario where a man named Colt Vaughn wakes up on a beach and he has no memory, and he has to figure out how to assassinate a whole bunch of visionaries to break the repetition of the loop. Can you hear music? What happened to the music? Music is very quiet. Can you hear the music? Because I can't hear it. You can hear it? Why can't I hear it? Alright, I don't know why it stopped playing for me. I can hear it now. Anyway, so Colt Vaughn is the main character. He's a black man, and he's also pursued by a woman who is able to go into his loops and kill him. So every time he dies, he wakes up back on the beach. He has to regain he's gained some memory back, but not all of it. He has to go back and find the right way to kill all of the visionaries in the proper sequence so that he can break the loop. So Gaming Bible introduced Dinga Bakaba. They asked how it was since the release of Deathloop. He says it's a relief. It went a lot better than they had hoped. It's a pretty stylish game, Gaming Bible says. And Dinga says that this was a goal, but he hopes it's something that people expect from Arkane. It was a departure from the setting of the Dishonored games, which was more of a Victorian era Europe type of feel. They wanted something more fun, and it was like a different world It was a difficult period for them to, to develop this game, of course, over the pandemic and stuff like that. They wanted something that was fun, witty, colorful, and, challenges the players. So I'm not reading this in detail. I wanted to get down to the point around why Dinga Bakaba thought it was important to incorporate blackness into this game at its core. And we're talking about, as we've been talking about all month, we're talking about authentic representation of Black people in games. So, Imogen Malore, as a Black woman, had mentioned that she had tweeted that, showing the pictures of the characters in the games, how suddenly she feels that she is represented, whereas she wasn't before. And Juliana was one of those people who, in a game that made her feel represented. And actually, Dinga Bakaba actually retweeted her tweet. And so she asked him, was that representation aspect an important element of Deathloop? Dinga said, actually, the very first version that was pitched by the team didn't have Juliana and Colt as Black characters. And I guess it started with Colt one day. One of the concept artists came with art where Colt was Black. And a few people asked questions like, okay, but we thought it was a game set in the north and on an icy island. As though Black people can't exist there. And I think it was Sébastien Guiton, the art director, who was the champion for Colt. He made a good point. If you're going to have some of those posters that we made for the game with the ensemble cast of all targets and Colt and Juliana, he said, I don't remember a lot of games or movies where the front character of an ensemble cast is a Black character. There are more in movies, but it's not that frequent, and there's not a ton in video games. So I think it was something that he wanted. And on my side, of course, I supported it because it didn't feel like an effort. At Arkane, we've made games with diverse characters before, be it the protagonist or the villains. Actually, the last game that we've made at Arkane Lyon, Dishonored: Death of the Outsider, featured a Black woman. Exactly. I don't know what people think. We've got a Black character, but it's in a cold place. Okay, what? I don't understand. So it's something that didn't feel like it would be an effort at first. It was more of an artistic vision, to which we were like, yeah, cool. And then the concept art came. It was really cool. Yeah, I want to play that guy. And that's the way I felt as soon as I saw the game. And Juliana was the same. She wasn't Black at first. At first she was very, I would say, racially ambiguous on purpose. And the more that the concept artist Basile Moulin drew her, the more she had, I would say, African-type features, or mixed at least. She just looked so good. Actually, the first character design was with that dress you can unlock, a 1960s dress. She was in her nice librarian dress with her haircut and headband and a huge sniper rifle. And we were like, yo, okay. So this is a character that has a lot of personality from the first look, and we embraced it. So yeah, it came from the artist at first. And I think that is so important that people who made the concept art actually thought that, yeah, it's a concept. Black people can be a concept. Do you know what I mean? Whiteness is not the template. And that there were champions at the studio who brought this forward in the face of, people who might have been naysayers. Past the initial reaction of people who had their idea of the characters as the first written pitch, I don't think there was any resistance to having those two leads as Black. On the publisher side, I don't think anyone ever told me, oh, maybe you could change the characters, which is good, because I'm not sure I would have loved those conversations. When you're creating your game behind your walls, you get used to those characters. You start to feel like they are people. So just like your friends, you will forget their skin color, or at some point, it's just your friends. So it's just Colt and just Juliana. And really, on the surface of it, it's really funny to have that conversation because this is a first-person game. And so it's so funny when you think about embodying a character, you think of yourself in the eyes of the character, like the character's eyes are your eyes. And so to me, it is so gratifying to feel like I'm in the eyes of somebody who looks like me. But I guess when I realized I guess when I really realized was when we were going to go to E3 to present the game and the show trailer. That was like, whoa, yeah, so that's what people will get, and the first impression of the game will lead through these characters. That's what the announcement trailer focused on, you know, the two lead characters. I guess that was a moment where I was starting to get a bit stressed about the reaction of the community. I was a bit anxious, both for the kind of bad reactions you hate to think exist, but they exist, and also the reactions from the Black community. Maybe we did something wrong, or the subject matter of the game, like these two characters are killing each other. I guess in the end, we were confident because we feel they are great characters and the way they look is part of it, sure, like it is for anyone, but someone defines them. I think that's such an important point. The story of them is not that they're Black. The story is that this man keeps dying and coming alive on a beach and he doesn't know why. And this woman keeps trying to kill him. That's the story. They're great characters. So if you, as you mentioned, some people can look at those characters and think, I admire them. Oh, and by the way, they look a little bit like me. And that makes the player feel good. That's definitely a bonus for effort in crafting those two best enemies. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of first-person games. I had never ever played a Bethesda game before in my life. I've never been interested in playing one. I think I played like a Wolfenstein clone on the PC a long time ago, but I'd never played like, you know, Dishonored or anything like that. But when I saw the first trailer for this game, I immediately wanted to get it. I wanted to experience it. I'd never seen a game which had two Black protagonists. I was so excited. I wanted to play as Juliana. Of course, I learned later that it was a first-person game, so I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a harder sell for me, but I eventually bought the game on sale. I've had the opportunity to try it by playing it, by borrowing it from the library first, of course, and I eventually bought a copy of the game. I was going to try and play it with you, like to play it a bit after making this the Black History Month presentation today, but I am trying to finish off Spider-Man and get the platinum on Thursday, so I don't have time to actually play Deathloop this month, but perhaps eventually if I ever go back to it. No, man, that's the point of the library, man. You know, my taxes are paying for it. I might as well take advantage. So, Gaming Bible says, I think that in games, color meant character for a long time. And I think it still does in a lot of ways. In the 90s, one of the only real Black characters that had personality was Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, and he was directly inspired by Mr. T. They kind of just put Mr. T in the game. It's important and nice, I guess, that games have evolved to the point where the character can just happen to be Black. I totally agree with that. And so does Dinga. He says, yeah, I agree. And to an extent, it makes you question things. Something that people actually reacted positively to recently was, you know, the main character of Returnal being a middle-aged woman of Greek origin. Like, I love that she just happens to be that. I think it's the exact same thing I want. It's not just characters who look like me. It's interesting for me to play as those characters, and you know the game doesn't have to be about it for it to feel fresh. It's odd. Like, I hope at some point it stops being fresh. Like, that would be the goal, that it stops being fresh, but it's still fresh. And it made me think about things like the characters' jobs, for instance. What would they do in life when they are not saving the world? And we've seen a lot of scientists, people in the military, like Colt is a captain. We've seen, you know, kings and plumbers, but look how much plumber sticks out, how unique it is, and how it's also part of the gameplay with the pipes. You'd imagine another character, but it works for him quite a bit. And I think that's something that sometimes we might be missing, you know, a character that has a job or an origin or, you know, a type. I remember pitching a game at a company I used to work for, and we needed a super fast character like a speedster. And the concept artist's first try was to make him a bit overweight, a kind of nice looking guy in a sweater and sportswear. And this is exactly not what you were imagining when you were writing your speedster. But it gave him so much immediately personality. So in general, I hope this is something that is explored a bit more facets of life, and the stories of coming from those perspectives could be interesting. And if that's not what the story is about, it still gives this authenticity, I guess, to the industry as a whole, not a specific product. The industry will become more legitimate as an art form that has diverse points of view and characters and locations. Like, we could talk about locations as well. Not enough games are set in Africa, if you ask me. And I totally agree. And so does Isabel. Absolutely, there are just not enough. Yeah, definitely when you could talk about culture and myth and history, there's a lot to explore. Someone mentioned to me recently that they couldn't remember a lead protagonist of South Asian Indian origin in a mainstream AAA game. I mean, the closest thing would be Far Cry 4 in Nepal, but I think he's half American though. So anyhow, you see my point. There's something to be explored. I remember when I was a game design student, looking at mythologies and where you would want to place a game. One of the things that I wrote down and I never explored, because I think it's one where I would need a lot of research, would be Indian mythology. Like the Mahabharata and all those things. There's so much to be explored to make new stories and make the industry more representative of what life on Earth actually looks like. If one day video games are how aliens study the human race, we probably want to get the beat of everyone in there, right? Do you think people will look at Deathloop and attempt a similar sort of representation in the future? What do you hope other developers take from this game into their own work? I mean, so Dinga says, I play a lot of games myself, and as a consumer, yes. I'm happy to see more diverse characters, but I also feel that it's good when they come from the creative vision of the team like everyone else. But overall, yes, I welcome more. Will it be the case? I have no clue. I really don't know. How people will look back at Deathloop in 5 years? How will people look back at Deathloop in 5 years when they will be making decisions? Overall, I'm not too worried because I look at the indie game space and I see a lot of diverse characters, and let's be honest, we AAA devs do take a lot of inspiration from indie games. A lot. It influences our work a lot and our creativity. It's so present in indie games that I don't see how it wouldn't ripple on to AAA and more mainstream games. To me, Deathloop aside, I would expect this to continue and to be more and more natural. That's the point. Actually, a piece of trivia. What do you think Frank Spicer's ethnicity is? He's one of the main targets in Deathloop. People know his face. He's been in trailers, but could you answer that question? So, she says, I don't think I could. And so Dinga says, and that's interesting to me because he's clearly not white. But I mean, no one seems to have even asked the question, which is great. It means he's a character. He's just Frank. And I hope it becomes as natural as that for NPCs. But for leads and antagonists, yes, we'll get there, I hope. Maybe my mind will change later on when there is more digestion. But at this point, I like the fact that you can make something complex to an extent personal. And I don't mean personal like Dinga and Sebastian, I mean personal for a studio. Like, it expresses a lot of the studio's personality and has a lot of individual and collective personality in it. It's very flavored. You might not like it, and we take the risk that you might not like it. And I hope that AAA games take inspiration from the indie world on that, on the ability to say, yes, we are trying to make something very accessible and that appeals to a large audience. But that doesn't mean that it has to be expected. You can put some personality in it, you can put some risk in both the gameplay and narrative, and make choices on representations or settings or themes, and still appeal to a large audience. If movies can tell us anything, it's that there have been some blockbusters that were first in their genre, in genres that hadn't had blockbusters before. That's a weird discussion to have, especially I don't want to be bragging or anything about the quality of the game, but I always felt that if you come with something unique and different and odd, even weird, if why not? But it's high quality and people can regroup on the quality, it will make more people willing to try it. I mean, there are a lot of movies I would never have cared about because of their subject matter if it was not for a great actor, a great director, or glowing reviews or word of mouth. So that's the thing. Hopefully people feel more comfortable with taking some risks. And when a lot of people are doing it, or a lot of games are doing it, we're not the only example. I hope that this will be part of that conversation. That's what I hope people will take away. Also, immersive sims are fun. Play them without necessarily wanting it to be a perfect string of actions. Arkane makes a specific type of game. What is Deathloop's message on that type of game? The message is to learn to embrace mistakes and creativity in playstyles. It makes all games even more fun. So finally, Isabel asks, if you could travel back to the first day of active development on Deathloop and leave something on your desk and then disappear and come back to the present, what would you leave? And Dinga says, can I leave a printout of the game's Metacritic page? All the things we discussed about creativity and taking risks. That's not easy. That's not easy by any means. And I'm looking for something as a way to encourage younger people to believe in themselves and their team. The Metacritic page would be one way, but that's too much. It spoils too much. It will change the timeline. So I guess he holds up a coin, a little coin that we made. It has Deathloop on one side, and if you don't succeed, die again on the other side. Because the message would be, you'll get through this. And it's something you'd like to keep on your desk to remember for the rest of your life. So yeah, probably that. It doesn't say too much. So I love his words on I love his words on, why this idea of having Black protagonists shouldn't just be something that's a novelty or something that is, it should be normal. It should be normal to see people who actually make up part of the world in the games, same way that they are in videos, movies and TV and stuff like that. It's just, I feel the gaming industry is very slow to catch up to the rest of the world. All right, the next article I have here is also from GameIndustry.biz. And this is, I think, another really important aspect of Dinga's leadership at a AAA game studio, because we hear so much about crunch on these games it happens at indie studios as well, but how poorly developers are treated when these AAA games are being produced and on a timeline and trying to conform to marketing schedules and stuff like that. I think you guys are aware of some of even my favorite gaming studios which have succumbed to crunch very notoriously. So for example, Naughty Dog, which is, my favorite developer, has had terrible periods of crunch on some of my favorite games, Uncharted 4, The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. And so they're now trying to, yes, you heard Naughty Dog because I'm talking about crunch. So what I'm saying is, in contrast to this next article, it's talking about Dinga Bakaba trying to, prevent crunch at his AAA studio. I'm saying that this is something that has been rampant in the industry for years and years and years. And it's only recently that developers are, being taken to task for it. So this is another reason why I thought this is such an important aspect of Dinga Bakaba's leadership in the AAA gaming space. So he describes his road into the industry as very chaotic. Despite loving video games, he felt like getting a job as a developer was inaccessible due to his lack of skills in math and art. So he actually gave up on trying to get a game industry job until he heard about game design. So he says, in most French articles and magazines, people would only talk about the developers and the programmers, but the term game design was not frequent at all. When I came across this term, I looked it up on Wikipedia immediately, and that clicked. The role of establishing the rules and tweaking them, and basically making the game part of a game, appealed to me immediately. So all the time he had spent modding board games, experimenting with level editors on titles like Tony Hawk, and serving as a dungeon master when playing RPGs gave him a foundation to build on. His ability to read English opened up new avenues to learn about the discipline of game design. There were no French books on it, he says, so I was lucky to access English and read a lot of books, blogs, and websites, and especially sites about the industry, learning for myself what I could not learn at school. In fact, he dropped out of school as he sought a way into the industry, a path that would eventually lead him to become studio director of Arkane and into an award-winning career, including the Develop Star Award at this year's Develop Brighton. Becoming a father at 22 increased the pressure for a steady income, and he eventually got a QA role at a mobile game studio in the feature phone era. He later secured an internship in game design and won his first game design role at Paris-based studio Wizardbox, but his dream was to work in AAA. He joined Dutch games firm PlayLogic, where he got to grips with tools like Unreal Engine 3, but continued to dream bigger. His boss, Olivier Lermitz, recommended him to Arkane founder Rafael Colantonio and helped secure an interview with not only Colantonio, but long-serving Arkane staffer Julien Roby and Dishonored creative director Harvey Smith. The interview, Bakaba says, was super scary but went well, and he joined the team just as his Dishonored was entering full production. It was a dream come true. Always loved immersive sims since Ultima Underworld, he says. Arkane, specializing in that kind of game, was always a goal for me when I entered the industry, especially as they were French. When I played the vertical slice of Dishonored, I immediately felt this was the right place for me. It was exactly the type of game I wanted to do. Like, you're never getting rid of me. I love that story for him. I love the way he had his, game designer origin story. He began as the systems designer at Arkane Lyon, collaborating with another based in the Austin studio, before moving up to a lead position on Dishonored 2 and its standalone expansion, Death of the Outsider. As work on the sequel progressed, Smith took Bakaba under his wing, involving him in more discussions around creative direction. And that's another piece in the industry that is so important, but is always lacking, is the idea of mentorship. And another leader who can see the talent and nurture that talent. Sadly, it doesn't happen enough for Black people in the gaming industry, in any industry to begin with. It's very hard to find, somebody who will take that interest and nurture that talent in the same, with the same frequently that they would for, white employees. It was a challenging project, with Arkane resorting to crunch to complete Dishonored 2. This was avoided for Death of the Outsider, but it left Bakaba with a moment of doubt. Should he stay on in Arkane? As he pondered his future, Colantonio revealed he himself was leaving, and Smith returned to the Austin studio to start a new project, which would become Redfall. Before he departed, Colantonio told Bakaba he wanted him to be co-creative director on Arkane's Lyon's next title, alongside Sébastien Mitton. I was very surprised, but it was almost presented as if I would accept, he said. You don't really have a choice, actually, which is the best way to force someone to deal with their imposter syndrome. That is such a good point. I accepted, and then it was like, what are we going to work on? All the fun discussions that led us to Deathloop. And again, I somehow stopped hearing the music. Why does it keep doing that? Okay, Deathloop, the immersive sim tutorial. The external perception has been that Deathloop was Arkane's attempt to appeal to a broader audience than it managed with Dishonored, tapping into fans of shooters rather than those of stealth or immersive sims. I know you hear it fine, it's just I can't hear it, so I have to do something to make myself hear it. However, Bakaba says it was an exercise in creativity. The studio had, after all, been committed to the somber and gritty world of Dishonored for almost 8 years, so the chance to work on something more experimental and outlandish was welcomed by the team. It was also an interesting introduction to a director role for Bakaba. Because it was just an experiment, we could go crazy and be ourselves. Be Arkane, he says. In that sense, there was no pressure, but it was very scary, especially in my position directing my first game. I wanted to somehow bring a little bit of myself and my taste as a player, my inspirations outside of Arkane, but also carry the legacy of what immersive sims are and what our players love and what the team is good at doing. It was very stressful for me because this was the first time that I had the responsibility to direct a team where I'm not an expert in what they do. Like the engineering team would come to and say, hey, adding multiplayer to our engine, that will be very tricky, are you sure? And I had to say yes. Yes, I was sure. People look forward to the times where they'll make those decisions. I can tell you it's terrifying. When it's about your own field, you're very confident. You trust yourself. But when you're talking to artists, to sound designers, programmers, animators, and having to make a decision even though they say it'll be hard, that's super scary. Bakaba's confidence grew as his team received more support from above. And again, that is so important to have coordinated leadership from top to bottom. No matter how much, a company might like to say that it's a flat structure, there's always a hierarchy. And that leadership has to flow at all levels of the organization. Bethesda and its playtesters were enthusiastic about the concept of Deathloop, and the fact PlayStation wanted it as an exclusive was a high form of praise. That was definitely unexpected, but also very validating, Bakaba recalls. That helped alleviate the doubts that we had internally. Maybe we all as a group couldn't see the potential in where this is going, but players see something. Bethesda sees something. There must be something. Maybe it's because we were in the eye of the storm, we couldn't really see it. Even the E3 reveal was a major boost for Bakaba and his team. The Deathloop developers had expected to go back into the dark and be forgotten, and then show off more of the game closer to release. With the time loop structure, the dual protagonists, and the distinct atmosphere glimpsed in the initial footage of Deathloop, put Deathloop firmly on the radar for a lot of players, including me. Social media was full of Arkane could do no wrong. The pressure was through the roof again. Arkane's underestimation of the hype Deathloop generated is perhaps to be expected. While it leans more into the first-person genre than anything the studio has previously produced, this is still an immersive sim, a category that includes acclaimed franchises such as Deus Ex, Eve, and Dishonored, all of which are currently on hold. When we previously spoke to Warren Spector, who has been instrumental in defining this genre, he suggested that this type of game struggles because it asks people to work. Bakaba agrees, but adds that immersive sims also ask you to author your experience at own fun. He observed that there's often a way to optimize the fun out of the game, and this was something the team tried to avoid with Deathloop. Removing the ability to simply quick save and quick load when you're tackling a particular challenge, or removing all the player's weapons and perks at the end of each loop unless you collect enough residuum to abuse them, is also designed to encourage players to experiment. So I think one of the things that he talks about more about how people were playing the game, and I'm not going to go too much into the game itself because I do want to play it, and I think you guys can read the article yourselves. But I wanted to emphasize his focus on, trying to break the crunch loop. So another of Deathloop's accomplishments is that despite the pressure of anticipation and the complications created by the pandemic, it was developed without crunch. In contrast to Dishonored 2, Bakaba says the team managed to avoid overworking itself and hopes this has become the norm of the studio. And I love the fact that they had taken the lessons from Dishonored 2 and that he's taken those lessons and brought it to his leadership as well. We are proud of Dishonored 2, but it was definitely painful, he says. Some people left the company after that because they were burnt out, and we were very sad that they left because we loved working with them. It also had a big impact on my personal life without getting too intimate about it. Yeah, Deathloop was difficult in many different ways, but not in the ways of we just burnt out our entire private life on it. It was challenging for other things, like the stress, the fact that it was novel, the fact that we were working from home. But I'm glad that we didn't add to the exhaustion of working whatever crazy number of hours. We managed to do this crazy project without crunch. So that is so amazing, and I really have to tip my hat to this team. Because again, as I said, this is not a game that I would ever normally have looked at had I not been taken in by it just from the style. And knowing that they were able to make a game of this quality, which was so universally praised, while respecting their team and making sure that there was work-life balance that enabled them to produce something of that high quality, there's no excuse. You can make this at AAA level. You can make a AAA game without burning out your team. They're your biggest asset. Before he continues, he emphasizes that there is a difference between crunch and paid overtime. France's labor laws are very strict on this. Overtime cannot exceed a certain number of hours and must be paid. Of course, the pandemic complicated these matters. People were at home, so there was nothing to be able to control in a way how they were working, and that became a bit scary. We had to be even more stringent on this project. There were some people who would do extra hours, but no extra hours that were crazy. I think that's also an important point, because people realized after they studied the data after the pandemic started and people were working from home, they realized that people were even more productive when working from home, but that's also because they didn't know when to turn off. They didn't have like that set 5 p.m. I have to leave, take my daughter to dance lessons, or I have to leave and get back home and stuff like that. So another thing that Bakaba says he's a little shy about is the fact that he personally works a lot. Due to his legal status in France, the labor's laws apply slightly differently to him, which enables him to work longer hours. However, his experience on these last few projects have made him reevaluate this. I don't know how to do otherwise, he admits. My father was an actor, my mother was a teacher. I saw them both work very hard. That's the only way I know. But I was inspired by the team and the way we started to rest more. I learned a lot about pacing myself specifically during this project. I'm one of the people that enjoys working long hours for a number of reasons, and even me, I can change my thinking. Having those conversations with your team and helping them see what the benefits are is also important. So you can see this, how he has evolved as a leader from experiencing crunch and what that meant to how they brought a different philosophy to this game. But also for him to have that self-reflection, to say, hey, I know this has been my lifestyle for a while, but I'm recognizing that it's not something that I should continue. And he's looking and receiving the examples from his peers and his employees and the people that are working with him. So I really think that's I really think that this is such an insightful kind of interview. I don't think you get that many kind of self-reflective interviews with leaders of game development studios. Like, a lot of them are, very self-reverent. I feel like some of the interviews I feel kind of are so, it's hero worship at the end of the day. You've got, the faces of studios who are, who at some point they seem like talking heads, and they go out and they market their game, and everything is about, how they are an artist and so on and so forth. It gets a little bit tedious. It's very rare, I feel, that you get this kind of introspective take on from a leader, from a studio head of a AAA studio who says, yes, I've made mistakes, I've learned from them. I think it's so important to surround myself with people who are learning as well, and bringing a much more healthy approach to game development. So I definitely think you guys should check out the rest of this article. I really thought it was a great article. I think the last thing I wanted to share, again, a worrying trend that has been happening in the gaming industry is the number of layoffs that are going on. And I think this is also a really great example of Dinga Bakaba's leadership in the AAA gaming space. Xbox's Blade developer Arkane Lyon offers support after mass layoffs. He says, I've been through a studio closure once. So this was in January. I'll just read this really quickly. It's a short article. The biggest surprise of last year's Game Awards show was arguably the reveal of Marvel's Blade by the Xbox-owned developer Arkane Lyon. The industry has experienced some mass layoffs in recent weeks. In response to this, the game's director Dinga Bakaba has now offered some support to anyone who recently lost their job in the industry, noting in a message on social media how Arkane Lyon was currently recruiting for its new project, with more positions to come. He also noted how he's been through the same studio closure process before, which is how he ended up at Arkane. This latest post was actually in direct response to the cancellation of the latest Deus Ex video game, which was being developed by Eidos, the Montreal, Canada-based studio that is now reportedly focused on an original franchise. So his tweet here, some people mentioned it in the comments, and out of modesty, I hesitate to say, but yes, we have some open positions in Lyon, including some that aren't yet on the website. If you have been hit by the recent layoffs, my DMs are open, and I'll make sure you are on top of the pile. And there are the already posted roles, but again, we will be opening others, so don't hesitate to reach out. I've been through a studio closure once, and luckily I ended up in Arkane, so if I can return the elevator, as we say in French, I'd be happy. Honestly, how often do you see something that honest and that, genuine, as somebody who reaches out to the industry to help? There are currently a total of 9 jobs listed on LinkedIn for Arkane Studios in France, including positions such as producer, level artist, senior animator, VFX artist. So far, Microsoft has shown off a teaser of this new game, and apart from this, Blade fans have also got some concept art. There's also been news this new Marvel game will be running on the Void engine, the same one that powered games like Deathloop and Dishonored. I just want to say, I really respect Dinga Bakaba. As I said, it's rare to find a black person at the head of a major AAA development studio, but to see somebody who is as humble and, who feels that it's important for him to also provide opportunities to other people and make sure that they can work in a safe and healthy environment. I think this is, really speaks to why I'm sharing the stories of contributions of Black people in video games during Black History Month. So yeah, definitely, as I said, I don't know, I just find this guy to be such an amazing guy. And if you want to learn more about him, as I said, you can use the February 25th command, and also use the command to get the links to the articles that I shared today. Wow. And I think it's great that he's won different awards as well. But yeah, that's Dinga Bakaba, the head of Arkane Lyon. I gotta say hats off to him, and I applaud him for all that he's accomplished and all that he's sharing to grow the industry.